It's amazing that wherever you grow up, it seems like we have some of the same experiences in school. So, did you have the experience where you're in a math class and you did your work and you got the test was given and you got the answers and the teacher gave it back and said, "Show your work." And you go, "Wait a minute, did I get the right answer?" "Yeah, but I want you to show your work." "Well, I got the answer, didn't I?" "Right, but I want you to show how you got it." "Well, I must know how I got it because I got it." Well, now, it didn't work. Still had to show the answer. So I was trying to figure out, what is it going on there? What was the point? The point was not to get the right answer. That's what I thought the point was. But that's not the point. The point was to understand how to think, how to reason, and how to come up with the answer in the proper way. When I teach classes, I often have frustrated students who simply say, "Just tell us the answer." And I say, "No, I want you to come up with it. I'm trying to help you learn how to get the answer." What is it that's important? It's important to understand. We've been talking this whole year about going on to perfection, getting to the point where we, as our definition of perfection is, where we fully trust God. We turn over everything to Him and let Him have complete control. The more I turn over to God, the more I let go of it myself, the more perfected I am in His sight. And one of the necessary things to do to become perfected is to understand. To understand. Paul was writing in this passage of Philippians 3. And he said in verse 15, "As many of us as are mature have this mind." Now, the word for mind there in the Greek is a word that means or refers to the diaphragm or the organs around the heart. That's where they get their word for mind. Because they understood there is something about the mind that is internal. It is within us. It grows from the inside out. And so the word is a word that says, be the kind of person who gets the answers from the inside out. It is very closely connected to what Ron talked about in class this morning, the character. It's not just about getting the answers. It's about being the person who understands the answers. So for a few minutes, let's discuss the value of understanding. Why don't you go to Matthew chapter 13 and just open your Bible to that text and leave it there. And we're going to use that text primarily to discuss the concept of understanding. First of all, when Jesus came to the earth, He found people who just did not understand. They didn't get it. Now, He discusses this starting in verse number 10. The disciples wanted to know why it was that He did all of His teaching in parables. And He would explain to them that you have been given to know the mysteries of the kingdom, but to them it has not been given. In other words, they don't know. So I'm going to talk to them in a way that will reveal whether they want to know or whether they don't want to know. See, a parable offers you the opportunity. A parable offered them the opportunity to know or to say, I don't want to know. Notice what happened to these people, verse 13. He said, I speak to them in parables because seeing they do not see, hearing they do not hear, and neither do they understand. They don't get it. What he found was people who did not understand. But what he also says is, this is exactly what Isaiah prophesied would happen. It happens to be from Isaiah chapter 6. And Isaiah said, hearing you will not hear and shall not understand. Seeing you will see and will not perceive. The hearts of this people have grown dull. Their ears are hard of hearing. Their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. Why did these people not understand? They had everything. They were the Jewish people given the message of God. It had been passed down from generation to generation. They even had a group of people who led them, the Pharisees, who knew everything, the details about the law, and they talked to them all the time. They had the answers. But they didn't understand what they had. Notice what happens in this text, verse 15. The heart has grown dull. There is a disease that can happen to people where the heart hardens, where the walls become thick, and they're not able to pump like it should. That's what this word is. They have grown dull. The word literally is, they have gotten so thick that they can't feel anything. It's so thick they can't feel. You know that sensation that you get, maybe we're all having to some degree or another, but I had a little place here on my leg, oddly enough, that started after I had wisdom teeth surgery almost 30 years ago. And there's this little spot on my leg where when I touch it, I can feel it, but I can't feel it. It's the first levels, I feel pressure, but I don't feel the touch like in other places. That's what this word is about. This word is, they just can't be touched. It can't get inside. They are so thick that they don't feel the sensation of being touched by the answers that they had. They're not penetrating. They're not getting in. They are dull. And their ears are hard of hearing. This is a little bit gross, to be honest with you. This really is the idea of your ears are so full of wax that you can't get the sound in. Clean them out. Everything has bottled up inside, and you cannot hear what you need to hear. And then their eyes are closed. They just won't open. They see, but they don't see. These are people who don't understand. They made some decisions. They did some actions. There were some things going on that somehow in their lives, their hearts, their eyes, and their ears were not attuned anymore to what they had been told for generations. They did not understand. Oh, but they had all the right answers. Jesus would even say in Matthew 23 about those Pharisees, they sit in Moses' seat. Whatever they tell you to do it. They know. But don't do as they do, for they're hypocrites. They don't understand. It's as though all you have to do is just give the right answers, and you got it. And Jesus says, no. Understanding is an inside-out process. Now recall, number 2 in this passage, that he had told that famous parable in the first 9 verses of Matthew 13. He told the parable about the man who went to sow seed in the field. And as he was sowing, of course, they would broadcast by hand, dip their hand in and broadcast the seed. And so they lost a bit of control over it, especially around the edges of the field. Some of the seed fell by the wayside, and the birds loved it because they could pick it off the ground and eat it. Some of it fell in the stony places. There was not a lot of earth there to support good root growth, and therefore when it sprung up, sun killed it quickly. Others fell among thorns and thistles, and when it came up, eventually those thorns choked out that good seed. But the good ground, of course, received it. It came down deep into the soil and produced a great harvest. After Jesus talks about them not understanding, he explains in verse 14 or 18 beginning, he explains this parable. And he says, those who receive the seed on the wayside are those who do not understand. They don't get it. And therefore it is sitting up on the top. You see, a failure to understand is dangerous. I think he makes 2 points as he describes the meaning of this parable. He says, number 1, if you don't understand, you won't be able to get back if you lose what you have. What if you forget the answer, but you don't know how you got there? You don't have an ability to retrace your steps. You don't have an ability to say, let me go back through it and try to figure it out. I mean, for instance, you have this happen every now and then, don't you? I know people, go ahead, been taking your shots for the last week, that since I've now turned 60, you've been taking your shots, that's okay. But you've probably had the same thing I've had. You go from one room through a second room, to a third room, and you get to the third room and say, why am I here? I came to get something. I know it. How do I figure out what it was? Well, you go back through to where you started, and you go, oh yeah, now I remember. But what if you forget and you're not able to retrace your steps? That's the difference that he's talking about. Here are people that the seed landed, but they lost it. It didn't come, they just forgot about it. It didn't make any difference to them. And they couldn't go back and retrieve it later because they forgot their way. If you don't understand, you can't get back. When the teacher said, show your work, she was telling me this: Yeah, that's the right answer here. But guess what? That won't be the right answer on the next one. So if you know the process, you can get to the right answer every single time, not just that time. You won't be able to get back if you don't understand. Number two, you won't be able to take what you know and apply it to the other situations that come up in life. This parable he describes, he says it begins with understanding and it ends with understanding. Those on the good soil, those are the ones who did understand and they receive it and they bear fruit. And right in the middle between those two understandings, there's life. Notice what he says. If you don't understand, when the difficult times in life come, you don't have enough earth. That's understanding. You don't have enough depth inside to be able to handle the difficulties of life. You don't understand. You can't apply it in this situation. You had the answer over there, but you don't have it here. That's why you got to show your work. So when the difficult times come, you'll have depth of earth to handle it. You need to understand because temptation is coming. And every one of us is approachable by the minions of the devil in different ways. And they want to know what those are. And if they can ever figure it out, that's how they're going to attack. But if I understand, then I can apply what I know to those temptations in life when they come. I can handle those difficulties. I can handle that temptation. Because Jesus says it's all about understanding. If you don't know, if you can't show your answer, how you got it, you won't be able to apply it in other times of life. Okay, so how do we get understanding? How does that happen? Well, there's a fantastic verse in Isaiah chapter 28. Here is what God said to his people about that very point. How are you going to understand? How are you going to get to the point where you have the depth within you to be able to handle every situation that arises? How can you be understanding so you can be more perfect in the sight of God? Isaiah 28, starting verse 9. Whom will he teach knowledge? Whom will he make to understand the message? Those just weaned from milk? Those just drawn from the breasts? What's he saying? Who's going to understand? The little child? Just getting started? No. He continues. For precept must be upon precept, precept on precept. Line must be upon line, line upon line. Here a little, there a little. How are we going to understand? Number one, it's a process. It starts young and it continues. It is truly fascinating to watch a little child learn his or her first spiritual words and ideas. It's really cool. You think about it. Parents who train their children at a very young age to think about Bible and Jesus and God. Man, we look in the faces of these preschool kids. One of the most fascinating things is to watch them during storytelling time, Bible storytelling time. I mean, they are in it. They're right there. And if something fantastic happens, they react, whoa. And if something sad happens, oh. I mean, they are right there and they get it. God says, start young. Start now. I'm always saying, our children need to be in Bible class. But Bible class is not enough. They need to be learning at home as well. We need to start early and continue the process right on through, because who is it that comes to understand? Well, as you grow and get older, you begin to understand. When you're really young, you just have the answers. Number 2, he says, you got to build on what you already know. That's how you understand. You build on what you already know. Here is a precept, put another one on top of it. Here is a line, put another one on top of it. Here's a little, there's a little. That's how you learn to understand. It's a building process on what you already know. To get deeper inside spiritually, we have to build on what we know. If you're satisfied with the Bible knowledge you have, you're not going to understand. You're not going to be perfect because you're not growing. But if you're excited about learning new things, if you love the discussion, for instance, in a Bible class, when this person is talking and that person is talking, and we're building upon it, man, that just is enjoyable. We're having this Monday night study of doing this very thing, building depth within us as individuals to be able to go out and to work with and teach those who need to know, and listening to the people talk and seeing how we're building upon each other. It has been incredible. God says, I want you to understand. Back to Paul in Philippians 3. Paul said, I'm not there yet, but here's what I'm doing. I'm still moving forward. How do you think he was moving forward? He said, let's have this mind. Here's what we're striving for. This is what we want to understand. I want to know. And I want to be able to take what I know and use it in my life. That is understanding. Today, to understand the sacrifice that God made is to know the depth of His love and of His concern for us. How can we not honor that depth of compassion? Jesus sacrifices for us. If you're not a child of God, today would be a great day to start that journey, growing in understanding. Maybe you are a child of God for years having been, but you've not dedicated yourself to deepening your relationship with the Lord to understand. Why don't you tell the Lord, right now, I'm going to start. I'm going to do better. I'm going to grow and deepen my understanding because I want to be perfect in your sight. Today, If you need us, we'll have shepherds at the front to meet you if you'll stand and sing together.